Welcome, everyone, to TechDaily.ai. I'm David, and I'm joined by our expert, Sophia.
Hey everyone, it's great to be here.
You can sponsor this podcast for just $25. Your message will be featured across major platforms like Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and more. If you're interested, visit TechDaily.ai to get started today.
So, today we are looking at something massive. Tim Cook has just stepped down as Apple's CEO.
Yeah, and, the broader media is basically framing this as just business as usual, right? Just a smooth, steady transition to an Apple lifer.
Right, but if you look at who is actually taking over, the narrative changes completely. The real story here is about a radical restructuring of the entire company.
Exactly. They are quietly admitting that they were structurally losing the artificial intelligence race.
And so we're going to unpack how this new leadership reveals a massive pivot, like why the current cloud AI business model is mathematically broken.
Yeah, the math is just completely upside down right now. Right. And we'll explore why Apple is betting the company on a playbook they first used, like 50 years ago, to change how you will use computing in the future.
It's a huge shift. So the evidence for this is printed right on their new org chart. John Turnus is the new CEO.
Right. And he is not an AI researcher. He's not a services guy. He's a hardware engineer with 25 years at the company.
Right, the guy who led the massive Mac transition from Intel to Apple Silicon.
Exactly. And his new second-in-command, John Srouji, has just been elevated to a brand new role.
Chief Hardware Officer.
Yeah. Okay, let's unpack this. Placing two silicon guys at the absolute top of the hierarchy, why does that matter so much?
Well, it's a stark admission. For years, everyone agreed Apple was behind in generative AI, right? So by handing the reins entirely to the hardware division, they're signaling they are done fighting the software war.
Because they can't win it on the terms set by the major frontier labs. And to understand why they had to concede that software race, you have to look at how Apple actually operates. Under Steve Jobs and Tim Cook, they use what's called a functional organization.
Right, where there's no single team that just builds an iPhone from top to bottom.
Right, it's totally horizontal. It operates like a corporate potluck dinner.
Yeah.
If you want to ship a new product, every single department head has to bring their dish and agree on the final menu.
Which is great for creating a beautifully integrated product, you know? The camera hardware talks perfectly to the photo software.
Yeah, but it is terrible for speed.
Exactly. And generative AI isn't an integration product right now. It's a raw capability sprint.
Right, the frontier labs are just trying to push the smartest model out the door as fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, and they're shipping at this relentless pace, sometimes like rolling out major updates monthly.
Because one leader can just evaluate a model, give the green light, and boom, it ships.
Right, but Apple's horizontal consensus-driven culture, everyone has to debate, align, test for edge cases.
So they were basically structurally doomed to be too slow.
Precisely. They fell years behind, so instead of trying to reinvent their entire culture to win a race, they were already losing.
They just decided to change the premise of the game entirely.
Yeah. Putting hardware on top means they are betting that hardware, not software, is the actual bottleneck for AI.
Which brings us to the core problem. The underlying math of the cloud AI industry just does not work at scale.
No, it really doesn't. What's fascinating here is just how upside down the economics are. Major frontier labs are losing money even on those $200 a month pro subscriptions.
Wait, really? $200 a month isn't enough to turn a profit.
Not even close. I mean, in traditional software, the margins on that would be insane. But AI is uniquely compute intensive, especially during inference.
Inference being when the AI actually generates the answer for you.
Right. So when a power user runs continuous agentic workflows.
Like having the AI code an app and test it for 8 hours straight.
Exactly. The raw computing power required for that costs the lab far more than any monthly fee covers.
But aren't chips getting better and cheaper? Won't Moore's Law just sort of step in and solve this over time?
You would assume so, right. But the physical constraints of the real world are hitting hard. Power and fab capacity are limiting GPU supply way more than NVIDIA's willingness to just, ship more chips.
Oh, wow. So like the actual fabrication plants like TSMC in Taiwan are maxed out.
Exactly. And beyond that, there's a literal wall approaching with the power grid. Running an AI query takes roughly 10 times the electricity of a normal Google search.
That is insane. So building the infrastructure for that.
It takes years. Civic planning, transformers, cooling. You can't just build a data center overnight.
So what are the implications for the listener then, if the math is broken?
It leads straight to a two-class AI system. Massive enterprises signing eight-figure contracts will get the real AI. Unconstrained, long context, continuous agents.
While regular consumers just get, what, throttled?
Basically, yeah. Metered access, you'll hit usage caps, or the models will secretly downgrade to save compute cycles.
And Apple realizes they cannot build a 10-year software strategy for the iPhone on someone else's loss-making cloud business.
Exactly. It's a mathematically doomed model.
So how do they escape this trap?
By moving compute off the cloud and onto the device. Local AI, or on-device inference.
Okay, so running the AI right on your phone or your Mac.
Yeah.
But the main benefit there isn't just privacy, is it?
No, it's the cost structure. With local AI, the cost is fixed. You already bought the chip.
Right, so asking your local model 1,000 questions costs essentially nothing.
It's a little bit of electricity. But in the cloud, the meter is always running. Every single prompt burns server time that someone has to pay for.
That is such a 1970s playbook.
Oh, totally. It's exactly what happened with mainframes.
Right. Back then, computing was this metered service on corporate mainframes.
Yeah.
It was like renting an Uber everywhere you went.
Highly convenient if you only need a ride occasionally, but ruinous if you drive all day.
Exactly. And then the Apple II came along. And it didn't try to beat the mainframe on raw power. It just brought a useful amount of compute into the home.
Dropping that marginal cost to zero, it was like finally buying your own car.
Yeah, and dropping that marginal cost to zero is what allowed power users to invent things like the digital spreadsheet, right? VisiCalc.
Precisely. You couldn't invent VisiCalc on a mainframe where every single cell calculation ticked a financial meter.
So Apple is making that exact same bet today with AI.
Right. Let the cloud handle the incredibly complex specialist problems, but let the device handle the long tail of pervasive daily AI.
Like drafting standard emails, summarizing transcripts, organizing local files.
Exactly. All of that can run locally for free.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Because there is a specific, massive buyer population currently improvising their own local AI right now.
Oh, yeah, the regulated professionals,
Yeah.
law firms, medical practices, tax accountants, therapists.
Because they face this immense pressure to use AI to stay competitive.
But putting client data into public cloud AI violates attorney-client privilege, IPAA, fiduciary duties.
All the major compliance hurdles. So what is their workaround?
They are literally buying clusters of retail Mac Minis, like 4 or 5 of them, stuffing them in server closets, and running local open weights models.
Wow. Just so the data literally never leaves the physical building.
Exactly. It solves the compliance issue for a fraction of the cost of an enterprise cloud contract.
Wait, but doesn't Apple have private cloud compute? Why don't they just use that?
Well, from a technical standpoint, Apple's PCC is incredibly impressive. It's cryptographically secure.
Right.
But technical security doesn't automatically equal legal compliance. A cryptographic lock doesn't satisfy an auditor who needs to know the physical jurisdiction of a server.
So they need to prove physical control of the data.
Exactly. And because Apple obscures the exact locations of their PCC nodes for security reasons, these firms can't guarantee jurisdictional compliance.
Which is why those IT closets are filling up with Mac Minis.
Right. And here's the thing about Apple's hardware. They use a unified memory architecture.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Rather than the CPU and GPU having separate pools of memory, they share one massive pool.
Oh, and running large language models requires an enormous amount of memory bandwidth, right?
Exactly. In the PC world, you'd have to buy specialized NVIDIA cards that cost tens of thousands of dollars to load massive open weights models.
But a high-end Mac Mini can just load it straight into the unified pool.
Right. It gives a standard desktop computer the AI processing capabilities of a dedicated server.
But Apple hasn't actually built an enterprise solution for this yet, have they? Like, there's no rackable silicon.
Nope. No rackable servers, no fleet management software, no I pay business associate agreements. They're leaving a multi-trillion-dollar unserved market gap.
Wow. So either Apple steps up or a third-party startup is going to wrap Apple hardware in a legally compliant layer and sell it to every medical practice in the country.
It is one of the clearest opportunities in the ecosystem today.
So let's break down what this massive shift means for the listener. Depending on who they are, what's the takeaway for leaders?
The strategic lesson is, if you are structurally set up to lose a race, don't just brute force a flawed strategy.
Change the premise of the game entirely.
Right, like Apple did. And, don't build business plans assuming cloud AI will just get infinitely cheaper.
Great point. Now, for the builders and founders, there are huge startup opportunities here. Don't just build API wrappers.
No, you need to build native AI products, applications that rely on free, continuous background inference.
Because that only makes economic sense on local silicon.
Exactly. Now, for prosumers, the intense AI users, you have to unlearn your cloud habits.
Right, we're also used to conserving tokens,
Yeah.
writing shorter prompts so we don't hit our limits.
But in a local AI environment, the new bottleneck is your personal data hygiene. A local model doesn't have the whole internet in its active memory.
So it relies on your personal context.
Right, you have to consolidate your notes, your calendars, your files. If they are scattered across a dozen apps, the local model can't read your full context.
That makes total sense. And finally, this means the device upgrade cycle is fully back.
Oh, completely. For the past decade, you could keep a phone for 3 or 4 years and barely notice a difference.
Because the software didn't demand more power.
But moving from an M2 to an M5 chip now dictates the fundamental reasoning capability of the device. It determines how smart your continuous background agents can be.
So the hardware really matters again. Which brings us full circle to John Turnus and John Strugi leading the company.
Exactly. Apple stepped off the cloud economics treadmill to bet on unmetered, private, local hardware.
They are essentially escaping a doomed race.
Yeah, and leveraging their distinct structural advantage in silicon.
Which is brilliant. So before we wrap up, what is a final provocative thought for everyone to mull over?
Well, think about this. We're watching the cloud giants pour hundreds of billions into data centers right now.
Yeah, the hyperscalers are spending fortunes.
But if the most valuable, heavy usage AI customers, the regulated enterprises, the power users, all move their daily workflows to local silicon because it's cheaper and private.
Oh, wow. What happens to all that immense cloud infrastructure?
Exactly. Will those cloud giants be left managing millions of square feet of empty, power-hungry servers?
Like the mainframe operators of the late 1970s, left holding the bag.
It is a very real possibility, and it'll define the next decade of tech investment.
That is a wild thought to end on. Thank you all for joining us for this conversation. If you want to keep examining these shifts with us, be sure to subscribe to TechDaily.ai. We'll catch you next time.